everybody, this is Kimberly from Lakeside Loops, and today I'm going to show you how to make the Harley herringbone crochet mittens. You can make these in 4 different sizes from baby all the way up to adult, and they actually match my Harley herringbone crochet head warmer. So if you haven't made this yet, you can give that pattern a try. That's a separate pattern, and these are the mittens that go with it. I use Lion Brand's Woolies yarn in Gray Heather. And a 4.25 millimeter crochet hook. You will also need the written pattern for these mittens, which you can find for free on my blog, lakesideloops.com, and this video tutorial will accompany that written pattern and explain the stitches and the construction and any parts that you might have questions about. You can also find the written pattern on Etsy and Ravelry, and that version of the pattern contains no ads and it's printable and downloadable. These mittens can be constructed with or without the thumb, depending on your needs. They are worked in rows and then seamed together at the end. The thumb is worked separately and then attached. Alright, so as I said, this mitten is created in rows, so we're working flat, and then we're going to seam this together to create our completed mitten. We're going to be doing the herringbone design and our ribbed cuff at the same time, so we're working this all up together in rows going back and forth. So again, you will need the written instructions in order to create this pattern. For the baby size, you'll see it's written that I need to chain 21, and then there's different chain lengths for the toddler, child, and adult size. So I've chained my 21 and I'm going to single crochet into the second chain from my hook. So not this chain, but this chain, I'm going to create a single crochet. And then I'm going to do what's called a herringbone single crochet until I only have 6 chains left. So herringbone single crochet, I'm going to insert my hook into the front bar of my previous stitch. The front bar, if you're looking at your single crochet, it's this loop right here. So I'm going to insert my hook into there, and then I'm going to insert my hook into my next chain. I'm going to grab my yarn and pull it through, and I'm actually going to pull it up quite high as my single crochet will allow me. And then I'm going to grab my yarn and pull through all 3 loops on my hook. That's a herringbone single crochet. Alright, so I'm going to show you again. So you're going to insert your hook. Again, this is the front bar of the previous stitch. I'm going to insert my hook into the next chain, grab my yarn and pull it through, and I'm going to pull it up really high, and then grab my yarn and pull through all 3 loops on my hook. So a little faster this time, into that front bar, into my chain, pull it up nice and high, grab my yarn and pull it through all 3. And by hooking into this front bar, you can see we're slanting it with each new stitch that we make. And so we're going to continue this until we only have 6 chains left. Alright, so I've skipped ahead and I only have 6 chains left to work into. This next stitch, instead of a herringbone single crochet, is going to be like a herringbone slip stitch. So I'm going to insert my hook into the front bar of my previous stitch and into my next chain. I'm going to grab my yarn and pull it through the chain, and then I'm actually going to pull it through both the loops on my hook as well. And that's how we're going to finish off this herringbone section. And now we're going to work on the ribbed part of the mitten, and this is created with slip stitches. So I'm going to slip stitch into these last 5 chains nice and loose. Alright, now we're going to chain 1 and turn. Now to create this ribbed look, we're going to be slip stitching into the back loop only. So these first 5 stitches, I'm going to go not into the front loop, I'm going to go into the back loop, and again, nice loose slip stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, now we're going to get back into our herringbone single crochet stitches. And if you worked the head warmer that goes with this pattern, you already know that when we're on this side, So when we're not working on the herringbone side, when we're working on sort of the wrong side or the back side, we're gonna be working from the back to the front instead of going into the stitches this way. We're gonna be going into the stitches this way. And we're not just going into our stitch, but we're also going to go into this back bar here. So here you can see your stitches all along the top. This third loop, this back bar that runs all along the back of your row, we're going to be working into that as well. So I'm going to make sure my yarn's at the front here. I'm going to put my hook into my stitch going from the back to the front, and I'm also going to put it around or through that back bar. Now I'm going to grab my yarn and pull it through to the back side and create a single crochet. Now we're going to dive back into the herringbone single crochet. So I'm going to insert my hook into the front bar of my previous stitch, into the stitch, and into the back bar. I'm going to grab my yarn and pull it through, bringing it up nice and high, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on my hook. So again, front bar, stitch, back bar, grab my yarn and pull it through up nice and high, and then grab my yarn and pull it through all 3 loops. So we're just going to continue this way until we only have 1 stitch left in our row. And as you get faster with this, you can kind of go through the stitch and the back bar at the same time. Alright, so I've skipped ahead and I'm at the very end of my row. I've only got 1 stitch left. So this last stitch is going to be a little bit different. Again, it's like a herringbone slip stitch. So I'm inserting my hook into the front bar of my previous stitch and then into the stitch itself. This stitch doesn't have a back bar. Sorry, it's hard to do on camera. Alright, then I'm going to grab my yarn and pull it through the stitch and then also through both of the loops that were on my hook. And that's how we're going to complete our row. Alright, so we're back to working on our side where our herringbone is starting to take shape. And again, on this side, when our herringbone is facing us, we're going to be working from front to back, the traditional way of going into your stitches. We're also going to be working into the stitch and the back bar again. So I'm going to insert my hook into the stitch, but also into that back bar. So I should have 3 loops on my hook. The 2 from my stitch, 1, 2, and then this back bar. I'm going to grab my yarn, pull it through, and create a single crochet. Now we're going to dive into the herringbone single crochet stitches again. And again, we're working into the stitch and the back bar. So we'll have 3 loops on our hook, and we're just going to create that herringbone single crochet. So again, front bar of the previous stitch, into the stitch and the back bar, grab my yarn and pull it up nice and high, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 stitches. So we're going to do that until we have 6 stitches left in our row. So we're going to stop when we have our 5 ribs to do and then our last herringbone stitch. Alright, so I've skipped ahead to the end here and I've got 6 stitches left. This last of the herringbone stitch again is a herringbone slip stitch. So I'm inserting my hook into the front bar of my previous stitch, into the next stitch, and there's not really a back bar, so just into the next stitch. I'm going to grab my yarn and pull it through the stitch and then through both loops on my hook. Now I'm going to dive into my slip stitches that create this rib, and again these slip stitches go into the back loop only. So you kind of have to turn, because when we work a slip stitch it kind of lays flat facing us, so when we're working on the other side it's kind of facing away from us. You kind of have to turn your work to see the stitch and find that back loop. And again, we're going to create loose slip stitches, so I'm going to make sure I'm not working too tightly. And you should have 5 slip stitches to finish off this row. That last one's sometimes hard to get into. All right, so we're just going to continue working like this until we create something that looks like this, and then as I said, I'm going to show you how to seam it all together. Alright, so as you can see, this ribbed section is smaller than this other end where we've done our herringbone design, and that's okay. This ribbed cuff is actually super stretchy, so it's perfect for the bottom section of our mitten. It kind of tapers it in around your wrist or your child's wrist, but it's stretchy enough for them to get their little hand in there no problem, and then bounces right back. All right, so I've taken what we've done and I've folded it in half so that the wrong side is facing up and the right side is facing in on itself. And I'm just slip stitching this end together, and then we're going to slip stitch along the top to close it off. So we're keeping this open and we're closing everything else up. So I'm just inserting my hook into this side and then into the opposite side. I'm grabbing my yarn and pulling it through to complete a slip stitch. Now, if you're not going to create a thumb, you can just continue slip stitching all the way along. If you're creating a thumb, we have to leave a hole here to attach the thumb. So I've left instructions in the written pattern on how many slip stitches to create, how many stitches to skip, and then you continue on. So for the baby size, we're going to do 9 slip stitches, and then we're going to skip 2 stitches. So I'm just going to do one more slip stitch here. And now I've got 2 choices. I can either fasten this off and rejoin my yarn after I skip 2 stitches, or I can just slip stitch very loosely into just one side of my mitten. Leaving the other side, so 2 slip stitches into this side, leaving this side open, and then skipping these 2 stitches here, start working back into both sides again. And that's going to leave me with this hole where I can attach my thumb. Alright, so again, when I get to the top here, I've slip stitched all the way here, leaving that gap for the thumb. I'm just going to continue slip stitching so that I can close this off as well. So I'm just going to slip stitch into both sides of the top section of my mitten, just throwing my hook in wherever it will fit. It doesn't have to be fancy or too proper. Alright, so I've finished and I have slip stitched all the way up one side and all the way across the top of my mitten to close it off, except for I left that little hole for my thumb, which is optional. Now I'm going to turn my mitten right side out, and you're left with this cute little guy. Alright, so I've turned my mitten right side out. And as you can see on the side, I have a hole. That's where I skipped those 2 stitches, and that's where I'm going to join my thumb. So I have the 2 stitches that I skipped on either side, and then there's it looks like a stitch, but it's from where we joined on either end of the hole. So all together, that's 6 places where we can slip stitch our 6 stitches around our thumb onto the thumb hole. So I actually left a long end here, a long tail from when I created my thumb. So I'm going to insert, to try and cut down on the bulk, I'm just going to insert into the front loops. So the front loop of my thumb and one of the loops along the side of this mitten. And I'm going to grab my long yarn tail, and I'm going to slip stitch those together. Then I'm going to go into the next front loop of my thumb and the next stitch along the thumb hole and slip stitch, here we go, slip stitch that together. Now I'm going to turn a little bit, and again the next front loop on my thumb, and this is one of those loops that was on the end of my thumb hole created by my seam. And I'm going to turn again. So we're just going around in a circle here, and I'm going to go into the next front loop on the thumb and then into this front loop on the mitten. And again, front loop on the thumb, stitch on the mitten, slip stitch them together, and then lastly, this last stitch on my thumb and this last spot on the mitten. I'm going to pull that through, go up into my mitten, and pull that yarn end into my mitten where I can secure it and weave it in. And just like that, your thumb is attached. Alright, so that is it for this video tutorial. I really hope that it helped you to create your mittens. If you still have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, and I can't wait to see your finished pieces, so please tag me at Lakeside Loops. I love seeing your work. Thanks, guys.